Are you looking for a quick, easy, and delicious dessert for your holiday table? I think I have the perfect solution for you here with my Pear Cranberry Galette. Only 2 bites a serving, and it definitely adds a touch of class to your dessert table. So come on into the kitchen. I'm going to show you how to do it coming up next. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Roy. I am a home cook and amateur baker, and I am here on this channel sharing recipes that have helped me to lose over 125 pounds, whether those recipes are mine or someone else's. Now today is going to be one of mine, and I'm going to use, once again, my Light and Fluffy Biscuit Dough, changing it up a little bit. Before, I've made some cinnamon rolls and also some variations on that with maple, pumpkin, apple. And if you haven't seen that video, I will put a card up here as well as list it in the description box below. Now what we will be making with that dough today is a Pear Cranberry Galette. Now if you've never heard of a galette before, I'm not overly surprised because it's not exactly a common household recipe, but it should be because it's extremely easy. Now a galette is basically a free-form pie. So if you've ever been intimidated to make a pie, you won't be intimidated to make a galette because it is super easy. You don't have to worry about a pie plate, about the crust shrinking. It's super easy, and I will be showing you how to do that, and I swear you will be making these all the time. Now, I did pear and cranberry because that would be a great addition to your holiday table, whether it's Thanksgiving or Christmas, because pears and cranberries are also associated with Christmas. But you can do anything. You can do apples. You can do blueberries, you can do peaches. Once you get a basic galette down, you can swap out the fruit as you like. So this is going to be an extremely versatile recipe. So let's go over the ingredients. Firstly, for the dough, we have basically the same ingredients I used for the cinnamon rolls. 1 cup of self-rising flour, and if you know me, if you've seen this channel before, I don't buy self-rising flour, I just make my own by adding 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder to 1 cup of flour. And that will be listed in the description box below. So make sure you check out the description box, and that will tell you how to make your own self-rising flour. Here in the North, sounding more and more Massachusetts every day. Here in the Northeast, it's not that easy to find self-rising flour as it is maybe down south, where it is more common, but you don't have to buy a separate flour, you can just make your own. So anyway, 1 cup of self-rising flour, 2 tablespoons of sugar replacement. I'm using Swerve, which is a 1-to-1 replacement for sugar. And if you're using something that is stronger in sweetness, you will have to adjust based on 2 tablespoons of sugar. I also have 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, and that's going to go into the dough to kind of give it a little flavor enhancement. Also part of the dough on this side, for some reason they put the filling right in the middle, I guess because it's filling. We have 1/4 cup of non-fat Greek yogurt with 2 tablespoons of almond milk, and those have been sitting out at room temperature because it's going to make it much easier for them to combine together smoothly if they're at room temperature. And I still have my 1/2 cup measure here because we're also using the secret ingredient in this dough, which is seltzer. It's basically carbonated water. You could use club soda or tonic soda. I know some of them have sodium in it, so you'll have to watch for that. If you can find seltzer, it's best to use a plain seltzer. You could use a flavored seltzer because those aren't as strong of a flavor as like soda, but I've also used diet soda in this. Just nothing with a really strong flavor like root beer or Coke. Even though the soda doesn't come through strongly, it comes through faintly enough that you don't want anything too harsh in there. So I would go, if you went for a diet soda, something like Sprite or 7-Up, something mild. But if you can find seltzer, it's best to use seltzer, in my opinion. Now for the filling, I have 2 pears here that I'm going to show you how I'm prepping those. I have 3/4 cup of cranberry. Now here is where you have a little wiggle room. I have 2 tablespoons of Swerve again, sugar replacement. Now when I made it in my test, I thought it was a little too tart, but Paul really liked that tartness. So I'm leaving it at 2 tablespoons. If you like it on the sweeter side, you can go to 4. If you think you want it somewhere in the middle, a little bit of sweetness and a little bit of sour, I would go with 3 tablespoons. But for right now, I'm using 2 tablespoons of the sugar replacement. I have 1 tablespoon of cornstarch that's going to help all of the juices in our fruit to congeal together so it doesn't run all over the place. We have another ½ teaspoon of cinnamon and a 1/4 teaspoon of ginger. Ginger and pear go really well together, as well as ginger and cranberry. But you could just use cinnamon, especially if you change up the fruit, you're going to want to maybe change up some of the spices that you use with it. And then I just have a teaspoon of lemon juice. That's to, when I prep the pears, I want to make sure they're not going to start turning brown too quickly. So that little bit of lemon juice is just going to keep them from oxidizing or turning brown. Now a surprising little ingredient that I have is for when it's all over, when it's all cooled down, I am going to be using a tablespoon of real confectioner's sugar. Now if you've seen this channel before, you know my partner Paul does not like sweeteners that you can taste, like that haven't been cooked into something. So I'm going to opt for 1 tablespoon of confectioner's sugar, which spread across this galette, which would serve 6. It will not add any bites or points. If you did a serving of 4, I believe I calculated it for a serving of 4 as well, and it still wouldn't calculate as bites or points because you can have 3/4 teaspoon of confectioner's sugar for 0 bites or blue points. I'm on the healthy, it was formerly I Track Bites, Better Balance plan, which is equivalent to the old which is equivalent to the old WW Blue plan. So based on the blue plan, you can probably see where your personal points would fit in. But 1 tablespoon spread across 4 servings would still be 0. So that's not going to add any bites. It'll give a little sprinkle of brightness on the top. It's optional. You don't have to put that on. And that covers all of the ingredients. I have some flour here standing by because I'm going to have to flour the counter. Now the first time I did it, I rolled it out directly on my parchment paper because I thought that would be easier than carrying it over. The one problem, it worked out great as far as that goes, but the one problem was when I pulled the edges up, as you'll see later, some of it remained on the parchment paper. And that started to burn because they're just thin little strips of dough that were left behind, and that started to burn. Luckily, it didn't affect the overall galette, but just to be on the safer side, I'm going to try rolling it out completely on here and transferring it to the parchment rather than rolling out right on the parchment. But you'll be seeing what I'm talking about in just a moment. So let me move a few things around and I will be right back. Okay, so I'm going to start with the fruit, and I have a bowl standing by ready to put everything into. And I can start off by adding in the cranberries, since those don't really need any processing. But the pears, I'm going to peel those. You could leave the peels on if you chose to, but Paul's not a fan of peels, so I'm going to eliminate any issues there. And just peel this down. I'm just going to show you how I prep this one, and then I will do the other one on my own. Now this one is very juicy, so just be careful as you're peeling if you do have a juicy fruit that doesn't slip from your hands. So I'm going to move this over, and I'm just going to use a small knife and cut off the edges. I want to put it on the flat side so that it doesn't slide out from under me and end up cutting me or anything. And then I'm just going to cut them into thin strips, and then cut those strips in half. So it's just slices, little half slices. If you wanted to cut them into smaller bits, you could, but they will soften up a bit as they are and not be an issue as far as like the size. So I'm just going to keep them at about a half of the strip. So that's how I'm going to prep the pears. As I said, you could cut them smaller if you choose. The world's your oyster, you do as you please. So I'm going to finish prepping up the pears, and then we will move on with the rest of the ingredients. Be right back. Okay, so there I have the last of the pear going in. Let's dry off my hands a little bit. Move this off to the side and bring in my rubber spatula. Silicone spatula, I don't know why I keep calling it a rubber spatula. And I'm just going to toss these around a little bit. And then I'm going to start with the lemon juice and toss that in there, just like I said, to make sure that this pear doesn't start to brown at all before we move on. And I also give it a nice little added hint of sour to go along with the cranberries. The sweetener and the spices. I'm going to toss this all together because I want to coat the fruit in the sugar and spice and everything nice. Stir those around until you see they're all coated like a uniform color, a little hint of that cinnamon brown in there. And then we're going to sprinkle over our cornstarch and get it all out, because like I said, this is going to help all these fruit juices to thicken as they are baking in the oven. And just incorporate that. It'll thicken slightly just from, whoa, get over here. See, always something trying to escape me. But I mean, that's pretty much all there is to it. You just mix everything together, set that aside. Let me grab all of our dough ingredients, and I'll be right back. All right, so if you've seen the cinnamon roll recipe or even the biscuit recipe, this will look pretty familiar. Just going to add in the sweetener to our flour, as well as the cinnamon. And I'm just using a fork because I'm going to gently whisk the seltzer later, and I just want to use a fork, nothing too forceful. So I'm just going to use that fork first to mix our cinnamon and sweetener in here with the flour. Just till you see the cinnamon is kind of dispersed evenly throughout there. So now in here I have my 1/4 cup of non-fat Greek yogurt and the 2 tablespoons of almond milk. I'm just going to whisk those together just until they become homogeneous. It's just, a lot of it's just to thin out the yogurt before we add in the seltzer. Because when we use the seltzer, we don't want to lose too many of those bubbles, because that's what's going to give us our fluffy lift. So we don't want to whisk all the bubbles out of there. So by thinning out the yogurt with the almond milk, that helps us to not have to work so hard once we add in the seltzer. So I'm just going to do 1/4 cup. And yes, I am using a dry measure cup for this, because it's easier for me than to try to measure it out just for a 1/4 cup. You could measure it in a liquid measuring cup if you'd like. I'm going to make myself a little soda with that later, and I've showed that in, actually I think both of them I showed the soda that I made, just using like a drink mix that you put into the water bottles. I use half of one of those with whatever's left in there and some ice, make myself a little soda of whatever flavor I like. But see, that's how quickly it came together. That's it. Now we are going to dump in our flour. And we're going to gently, at first, fold this in. Now folding, I've mentioned it before, is where you go down the outside along the bottom and then pull up and flip it over so that you're gently moistening the flour. And a lot of times you'll see this used with whipped egg whites or with cream, whipped cream, because you don't want to lose the air bubbles. And if you're too forceful with it, a lot of that will deflate a little bit. So now it's come together mostly. I'm going to press down into the flour that's remaining on the bottom. And that's pretty much all there is to it. So I need to get the flour. I'm going to move you over here, thank you, and get the flour out. And just use a little bit of flour. You don't need a lot. And I need a rolling pin. So I have my rolling pin here, and I am going to, even though this is a silicone rolling pin, stuff still sticks to it. So I'm going to flour that and turn out the dough. Now the first thing you're going to do once you get the dough out is, it's kind of like a choppy, shaggy mess right now. You want to fold it 3 or 4 times like this. Just pull it over itself and press down. Pull it over, press down. Pull it over, press down. Pull it over and press down. And then you can hear that like slapping a baby's bottom. That's what you're looking for. Let me grab my bench scraper that's going to help me to get the dough off of the countertop once I've rolled it out, and clean off my hands. I'll be right back. Okay, so I have my bench scraper. This is a bench scraper mostly used like to scrape stuff off of your workbench, is where it got its name. And if you don't have one of these, you could use like a knife, you could use a big spatula, something that would help you, or you could do like I did earlier the first time when I was talking about just roll it directly on the parchment and then fold it up. But we are going to roll this out very thinly. And see, it's sticking to the rolling pin. This silicone rolling pin doesn't really keep things from sticking as much as I would hope. So So I'm just going to gather up some of this flour and continue rolling. You want to get it fairly large. Actually, I will measure this so I can give you an exact measurement of how big this is. So this is rolled out to about 10 by 10. Doesn't have to be precise. Like I said, this is free form. So it's not, you just want it rolled thinly. Now we are going to hopefully transfer this off of the board. So I'm just scraping up, and I'm going to roll it onto the rolling pin and pick it up this way. That way I don't have to worry about trying to keep my hands on it. And of course it's sticking. Come on, let go. Let go. There you go. All right, you go over here. And you go over there. So now I'm just going to fix this, especially where it stuck to the rolling pin there. And just spread it out. You can see it's not a perfectly round shape. Most galettes are not. And I am putting this on parchment just because it's going to be far easier. If you didn't have parchment or didn't want to use parchment, just make sure you really spray your sheet pan before putting it on there. And now it is time. I don't know why I got rid of this because I'm going to need that in a moment. Now it is time to add in our fruit. Now you can see there is a lot of juice in there, and that's why you want that cornstarch, because that cornstarch is going to help to combine this into a nice set filling for our galette. So you're just going to basically mound this up in the center, and then I'm going to spread it out, leaving about an inch or so around the edge. And if they do fall off to the side, it's not a problem, because our next step is going to rein them all in. All right, so you see that's pretty much all set right in the middle. Now the next step is you need like the crust part, and all you're going to do is fold up these edges here and fold it up over the fruit. And see, I'm using, I don't think it matters if I did roll it out on the parchment, because it's still sticking, and I think I'm still going to get the burn marks on that. So I say just roll it onto the parchment paper, and that's what I'm going to list on the recipe, as well as the alternative of just rolling it out. But you just need to lift and fold over the fruit here. I'm going to try to scrape up some of this dough that's on the parchment without hopefully tearing the parchment. And that way there's less chance of stuff burning. And just kind of pull it up, fold it over, and that's your galette. Just a free-form pie. I've actually seen it called a free-form cake, but it's more like a pie to me, so I'm sticking with pie. All right, so I have my oven preheated to 400 degrees. So this will go into the oven for about 30 to 40 minutes. You just want to make sure you start checking on it maybe at the 20-minute mark, just to make sure. Some ovens run warmer. So if you see it's starting to get too brown, you could cover it loosely with some foil, just to make sure that it's not getting too much direct heat and won't continue to darken too much. But this is going in. I will show you what it looks like when it comes out. Okay, so here we have our Pear Cranberry Galette. It's still very hot, but you can see a little bit seeped out over here because I didn't have this side folded up enough. But this is a rustic looking dish. It's not supposed to be perfect. And you can see that the juices have started to set up nicely. They've gelled a bit from the cornstarch. I'm gonna let this cool for maybe about a half an hour. I'm gonna leave it on the sheet pan because I wanna make sure that bottom is cooked through, and having that hot sheet pan on the bottom is gonna help it to cook through if there's any rawness down there. And when it cools down a little bit more, those juices will set up a little bit more, be firmer. Now, when I first served this to Paul and I used a plate and a fork. You can actually pick it up kind of like a pizza. It's that firm, it's that stable, and it was a little tough to cut through with just the fork. So if you do use a fork, you might want a knife because the biscuit dough is a bit firmer than a pizza crust. But I'm gonna let this cool and I will be back. Oh, I do have my confectioner sugar standing by with my sieve, but I'm not going to put it on now because if I put it on now before it had time to cool, that sugar would just melt right into it and kind of defeat the purpose. I mean, you'd still have the sweetness, but you wouldn't have that look. And the look is everything. Well, no, the taste is everything, but the look helps. So I'm gonna let this cool about half an hour. I'll be back to show you the end result and to give you those nutrition facts that you were so eager for. Okay, so it has been roughly half an hour, maybe a little bit less. I just wanted to show you how I take this off of here because you kind of have to peel the parchment away. And I'm gonna put it onto a cutting board so I can cut it. But just gonna like gently lift up around the edge here. So that you're pulling it away from the parchment. And there you have it. Let me see if I can grab a peek at the bottom. I don't know if you can see the bottom. It's nice and brown from almost like a pizza crust in a way, but still very tender. So I'm going to take my 1 tablespoon of powdered sugar, and that might not seem like a lot, and it's not, because it's not going to add any bites or points. And I'm just going to tap it all over here, just to give it like a festive look to it. And I mean, really, it's doing quite a good job of covering everything, giving it that snowy look. This would be great on a Christmas dessert table. And there you have our Pear Cranberry Galette. Now this is going to make 6 servings. So I'm just going to cut into as good of a section as I can. You know, cutting into 6 is not the easiest. It's much easier when you go with 8. But you know, I like a healthy sized portion, especially when it comes to desserts. So I try to make foods that are generous in portion, but not in bites or calories. And there we go. Now, as I said, once it cools down more, this filling will set up a little bit firmer than it is now. It's fine the way it is. I don't know why I threw away the paper towel. I know I'm going to need it. But there you have a Pear Cranberry Galette. That's a nice generous portion, and that portion is only 2 bites, 2 blue points. I think I mentioned I'm on the healthy, or formerly iTrack Bites Better Balance plan, which is equivalent to the old WW Blue plan. So those are the bites and points that I give. If you are following calories, 1 serving of this is 136 calories. And if you're following macros, the fat is 0.3 grams, the carbs are 36.7 grams, and the protein is 3.4 grams. And that's as I did it with the fruit I used. As I said, this is versatile. You could change up the fruit. You don't like cranberries, just do pear. You don't like pear, do apple. You want something for the summer, do peach, do blueberry, do peach and blueberry. This is very versatile, so once you have the basics of how to make a galette, and you saw how simple that was, it wasn't as fussy as a pie, then you can make a dessert with any flavor you want. I hope that you enjoyed this recipe, and if you did, please give me a thumbs up. I would appreciate that. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't and you are looking for recipes that can help you on a weight loss journey. And share this video if you think there is anyone out there who would be interested in something like this. And hit the notification bell for any time I upload a video. If you missed it, I did upload a bonus video yesterday morning doing a green bean casserole that was a request from one of the subscribers. And I did it as my testing because I didn't have time to test it and then film it. So I said, why not combine the two and film it as you're testing it? So that's what I did. So if you missed that, check that one out. I'll leave a card here. I'll leave a link down below. And speaking of the description box down below, there you can also find the link to my recipe blog, so you can find all of my recipes there, as well as other links to my stores, to my Amazon shop, to other channels that I watch that do weight loss content. And while you're down there, why not comment? Does this sound interesting to you? Would you like pear and cranberry, or would you try something else? And you can also follow me over on social media. Here's my Instagram handle. And there are 2 Facebook groups that I am part of. One is mine, Recipes with Roy, and the other one is Finding Our Way, W-E-I-G-H. And that one I co-admin with Jennifer Lynn from the Jennifer Lynn channel, as well as Bree Coleman from Balancing Life with Bree. The 3 of us share the admin duties over there, and there are a lot of great people over there, very interactive group with lots of tips, tricks, recipes, and support. So if you need those kinds of things, stop on by those groups. So I think Paul and I are going to go and have a little bit of dessert, and I hope that you will do the same very soon. So until next time, bye.